the webinar.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the Park and Recreation Commission to order. When we start, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance, please stand and mute your microphone. Sorry,
Chris, yeah, there you go.
I was muted. Giovanna, if you'd call the roll, please.
I would be happy to, Chair Massey. We have Commissioner Fields,
Here.
Commissioner Holm,
Here.
Commissioner Wolnick,
Here.
Vice Chair Held,
Here.
Chair Massey.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Due to the physical distancing protocols in place at this time, we continue to encourage public participation remotely. Information on how to provide public comment is explained at the top and bottom of the published agenda. There are two ways to participate. Join the Zoom meeting by clicking on the link at the top of the agenda. Use the raise your hand button to be called on at the appropriate time. Please unmute yourself only when called upon. Or phone in participation can be done by calling 408-638-0968 with the conference ID 815-42-0235 and the passcode 137566. Press *9 to raise your hand to be called and *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for that specific item. Next item on our agenda is the consent calendar, and the consent calendar for tonight is approval of minutes of the July 7th, 2021 meeting. Does anyone have any changes to propose to the draft minutes that were sent around? No. Okay, I'd be looking for a motion and second for approval.
I move we approve them.
Second. Oh, second.
Okay, Giovanna, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chair Massey. Commissioner Holm,
Yes.
Commissioner Wolnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Fields,
Yes.
Commissioner Held,
Yes.
Commissioner Massey.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. At this time, we offer the members of the public an opportunity to comment on any matters not on tonight's agenda. Tonight's agenda is review of the Central Park Play Area Preferred Alternative. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may address the commission at this time. State law prevents the commission from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. Public comment is limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, an opportunity for additional public comment may be provided later in the agenda. Do we have any public comment on matters not on tonight's agenda?
Chair Massey, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, well then Hearing none, I will close the public comment period. And we'll move on to our new business for tonight, which is the Central Park Play Area Preferred Alternative. We have with us tonight two individuals from the RRM design team, and I believe you have a presentation for us. You have the floor.
So thank you, Chair Massey and members of the commission. I think we're very excited to bring the preferred alternative for the Central Park Playground before all of you. Those of you who have been on the commission for several years have known that this first phase of improvement for Central Park is long overdue. And so after a bit of a delayed effort during the COVID, we brought the process back together this last June with a number of public comment periods, some workshops. And so we're very excited to have Leif Mackay and Marissa Peltier from RRM to review the alternatives. And then we'll be looking for comment both from members of the public as well as the commission. So with that, I will turn it over to Leif.
Thank you, Sheila. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So just very excited to be here tonight. We've got, I think, some very exciting things to share with you. I just wanted to let you know I've got like 3 screens in front of me, and it's a bit like mission control. So if it looks like I'm looking sideways, it's because I'm looking at my other screen, but I'm not zoning out doing something else. Just forgive me if this gets, if it takes me a second here. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Excellent. So tonight we're going to present the preferred alternative for the playground that we've been working on for a little while now, because it's our progress has been a little slowed down, as Sheila mentioned. The brief agenda is we'll just recap a little bit about how we got to this point. Just re-familiarize you all with the site, even though it's probably highly familiar to all of you. Summarize the outreach events that we undertook to get to this point, which included some earlier drafts, alternatives of the designs. And then we'll walk you through the preferred plan that would represent the current concept that's resulted from all that community input, and briefly touch on next steps. Sheila, I wonder, would you like to talk about the master plan process, or should I just keep going through?
Leif, I think you can. I mean, I think, again, many of the commissioners were involved in at least a part of that process. So I think just bringing people up to date briefly would be fine.
Perfect. Okay, so the master plan process, which RRM was fortunate enough to be involved with as well, goes all the way back to 2014. So this has been percolating for some time. We ended up with a final adopted master plan at the City Council in 2018, so a couple of years ago. And that had its own series of quite intensive outreach, which the playground area was kind of looked at, but not in great detail. So there was a whole set of outreach that happened prior to this project we're working on now. Then on the bar on the bottom shows what we've been doing lately for the playground specifically. We've had a number of outreach activities, which I'll explain shortly. We've developed some alternatives to get some feedback from people. We've refined the ideas, and that's what we're here to share with you tonight. This is a refresher. That's the adopted master plan that no doubt everyone's familiar with. The play area is down along El Camino, and it occupies about roughly 2 acres of the overall site. There it is there. Just to sort of set the table for tonight's discussion, Fitzgerald Field on the left there, the big event lawn that's kind of teardrop shaped at the top. Some of the other existing amenities, the group picnic area to the right, the train ride to the left, which is going to remain undisturbed, and the existing restrooms, which will be disturbed, and I'll explain that in a little bit. Some photos of the site. It's really interesting when you look at static photos of the site that it actually looks quite amazing despite some of the shortcomings of the playground because of this urban forest that the park enjoys. So, I mean, any one of these photos, many other parks across the state would be delighted to have an environment like this to start with. So it's a really excellent starting point. So the outreach we undertook for the playground specifically, we had the first event we didn't have any designs. We showed up and we had an event in the park catching passers-by, and we were asking people about their opinions about what would be an appropriate character, what sort of things would they like to see there, what were they scared of losing? And we took a lot of input. We had 24 sign-ins, but that's a little bit deceptive because that's just the people that signed in, and many people signed in, one person representing a family. So the numbers greater than that, we just don't have an accurate tally. We also followed up with hard copy and online surveys. They were the same survey, just two different ways to take it. And we got another 46 responses through that avenue. And then the key takeaways at the bottom, you can read yourself, but the priorities were really what helped drive our next phase of design, which was imaginative, inclusive, and natural. Because they're the character, the vision setting statements that really give the designers some direction. The other things are physical things that we can fit in and deal with in other ways. So following that, we came up with two sort of broad concepts based on everything we heard, two very different concepts. And I think these may have been in your staff report, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time touching on these. This was the first one. It's called Playful History. And this one's inspired by the history of Central Park. You can see in the center of this rendering, it features like a playful interpretation of the original Cole residence, like a playhouse. And we kind of incorporated a very rich program of historic references that were also fun. So maybe sort of some whimsical portraits on the wall and some sort of fun furnishings that kids could play and move around, things like that. There were some other things like a carriage house on the right, a water tower on the left, and this kind of, again, a playful sort of sculpture garden theme, drawing on the giraffe and the dog and the other elements that you already have in the park. The second concept was really taking advantage of the park's sense of place, and it blurs the line between the play environment and the beautiful forested surrounds. It's very nature inspired. So you see natural materials and nature inspired play elements too, to really reinforce that sense of place that is very natural and grounded. So these are the two alternatives we took back to the public for round 2 of our outreach. And the bullets at the top show we actually had a number of events that collectively informed the process. So we had another event in the park. We had basically a repeat of that virtually, shared the same things. My colleague and I went to one of your after-school programs and talked to a room full of kids after school. And we did online follow-up surveys after that. And you can see the numbers, the number of participation in this one grew quite a lot. So we had well over 100 of respondents on the online survey. And the key takeaways were, drum roll, the Adventure Village concept was the runaway preferred direction for us to take the design. But there were a few things that they liked about the other one that folks asked if we may be able to bring those into that concept, which was a zip line, some music features, and they really liked the bronze sculptures, the art. And we needed to place an emphasis on shade inclusivity and security. So that was that. And then so we took all this information from all these events and we mashed them all together and came up with the preferred plan, which I'm going to have a series of slides for you to explain that. There's a lot going on, fair warning, so I'm not going to get into the minutiae of it. I'm happy to answer questions at the end, but I'll do my best to give you the highlights and then we can circle back. Okay, here it is, the Adventure Village, the preferred plan. I've got some follow-up slides that zero in on some of these areas to show you more detail. So really on this slide, what I want to do is point out the sort of main features and zones. And then I'll go into some more detail in a minute. So I think what I'll do is grab my pointer. Oh, first thing I want to tell you is it's very hard to draw this plan and accurately represent the tree canopies that are out there. Part of the beauty of this design is, as you'll see shortly, is it goes in and under all the trees. So we couldn't really draw the trees because it would obscure most of the design. So I just wanted to show you graphically, this is all the existing trees in the area that are going to stay there. You can see how much of the new playground is actually under that canopy. So if it looks a little stark and barren to you, just keep in mind that half of it is underneath the trees. So let's start. I'm going to maybe take the approach of walking as if you were walking into the playground yourself. So can you all see that red pointer? Excellent. So this is probably where most people will approach the playground from the parking structure or walking in from that side of the park. Incidentally, this path around the edge is the existing path. So if you're intimately familiar with the space, it's basically inside that existing path is the project site. So you would walk in and I'll just stop here so you don't get dizzy watching that jump around. The first thing you would encounter is on your right, which is actually below the icon, is a series of picnicking areas that could be individual family, or you could have multiple groups together. That's what those little brown symbols are, different picnicking tables. So there's a really nice sort of symbiotic relationship with the playground. If you keep walking in, I'll stop here. This is a little node with a sculpture in it, some sort of playful sculpture. On the left, which would be up on the screen, is the tiny tots area, 2 to 5 age. And I'm going to go into detail in that in a minute. On the right is the star of the show. It's the big central hub of the playground, which is tailored towards the older kids, the 5 to 12-year-olds. If I keep walking through this sort of central spine, I'll stop here. Off to the left, which is up, that rectangle is the new restroom. This is replacing what is there today. That existing restroom is very old, out of compliance with the code, and the master plan showed a restroom in this location because it's intended to serve a greater area than just the playground. So when there's events on the lawn, this is much more centralized for other activities. So we haven't really got into detail on the size of that building, but it's likely it could be sized a little larger than it needs to be just for a playground, because we anticipate it serving many purposes. Let's come down this way, and you end up in this zone right here, which is a large covered picnic shelter, which could be first come, first served, or the city may choose to make it a reservable space for birthday parties and things like that. And a deck around an existing tree, where we imagine this is the place where parents plop their diaper bags down and their strollers and take a breather. And it's fairly central, so they can see a lot of the playground from that point. If you keep coming, I'll show you a few of the sort of the play areas that aren't on the next slide. This bottom right is full of different types of swings, one of the most popular items in any playground. So there's all different sorts. There's the big sort of, it looks like a big saucer. There's fully accessible swings with the full bucket seat. There's belt swings, tiny tot swings. It's a swing zone. In here, it's hard to see, but that's a sort of a music jam area. There's things like chimes. It's all permanently installed, but it's chimes, drums, xylophones, things of that nature, which fosters kind of collective play. People can get in there and try to make music together. On this bottom section here, which is really the edge of the playground area, is a zip line. This is one of the features that was in the other alternative that we brought into this one because it was very popular in the outreach that we did. It works really well here because there's nothing on the other side of it that's attractive to kids to cut through the zip line zone. It works well on the edge there. And that's it for that. I'm going to go into more detail in this central area and also in this area to give you a flavor of what's happening now. Bear with me here. Okay, you still seeing my screen? Excellent. So this is just a zoomed in view of the central hub. It's pretty exciting. It's that the main sort of iconic elements. There's these 3 tower features. They'd be vertical and kind of eye-catching. Each one would have its own character, but they're intended to be a little playful, and they give us the opportunity to have play value at different elevations off the ground and interconnectedness. I have some character photos of that in a little bit. So this central area is 2 big mounds that are basic with this cutaway zone in the middle. This is actually flat on top. This is sloped on top. Sloped, flat. Sorry, I didn't realize you couldn't see my cursor there for a second. Let me get the pointer. This one's flat. This one's sloped. There's all these ground level features. This is all flat through here. And the surfaces vary. We started talking to the community about basically maintaining the wood chips that we have out there today. And there was mixed reactions to that for various reasons. So what we're showing is a combination of different strategically placed surfaces. This would be sand in the middle, but it's sort of a contained area. So it's not just sand everywhere. This is likely to be some wood chips. And then around the edge is this very cool feature. It's basically an elevated boardwalk. And I'll show you some images of that too. The intent there was to bring the playground up into the trees, almost like a canopy walk. It's not really up in the canopies, but to a child, it's going to feel like they're way off the ground. It's probably 6 feet off the ground, so it's not way out of a parent's reach, but that's pretty high for a kid. And it's got these sort of peculiar cutouts in it because these are where giant trees are coming through. So it's almost like a boardwalk that's going around and through the trees. There's another tree here. There's another tree here. Another tree here. So you get the picture. It's like a almost quasi the feel of a tree house without actually making it a tree house. You start here and you slowly work your way up. So it keeps ramping up until this point here where this is all flat 6 feet off the ground. There's a picnic area. There's different ways to get up and down. This is a sloped climbing wall. There's slides, a wobbly net bridge, and like a jumbled stack of logs that is designed to scramble and clamber over. This is a pretty cool feature. It's like a big, funny looking bird that you can climb up in and actually make it move. So it's got some kinetic quality to it as well. This slide tries to sort of depict the accessibility of this area. So I'll tell you what these different colors mean. The line represents an accessible path of travel that a wheelchair could traverse. So this is quite a feat, getting a wheelchair in a very gradual slope all the way up 6 feet above the ground, so that they can be included and experience these being elevated off the ground with everyone else and not look up at it and yearn for it. So that's quite unique. Now they can get around through here too. The red dots are all accessible from the ground, which is another sort of inclusive feature. Anyone can get to them and enjoy them. You don't have to transfer to something higher to get there. And then the purple features are things that are the most accessible from a play perspective for someone who's transferring in and out of a chair. So this slide, for example, is a double wide slide, so it's very easy and gentle. Spinners, like little round merry-go-rounds that are sort of on the ground that they could actually, all users could enjoy equally. Then we move on to the Tiny Tots area. This is another one of the things we heard, that there was a lot of discussion about, should it be fenced? Should the playground be fenced? Should it not be fenced? We didn't originally have it, but now we do. We have a fence that basically wraps around the playground. You can see it taking off here, so that once you're in the playground, everything's wide open, but it does give some parents a sense of safety that their kids aren't going to take off. The concept on this area is like a little fairy garden idea. So if we start here at the sculpture, you see there's a path that meanders through, in and out, and it's got little things to do along the way. Most things are sort of either at ground level or very close. So this is a very downscaled area for the 2 to 5 year olds. You would start, you'd walk in here. This is a sort of an archway tunnel, like made of willow or something like that, like a willow tunnel. On the left, there's a sort of a friendly snake that you can sit on, and it's a sand play area. You keep walking. This is a sort of bubbling boulders. So this is bringing water in, and you have that tactile experience of touching and feeling the water. This is one of the most popular elements in our outreach, was the idea of water and play, and which is it's understandable why it's so popular. It also presents the design team with a big challenge, and that is how to keep it sustainable for the city as time goes on. I'm sure we've all been to playgrounds where there's what used to be a water feature and it's turned off collecting dust for various reasons, and that's kind of depressing. So this is an idea we came up with. It's not a pool of water, but it still gives children the chance to splash and interact with it in a more low-key way. So these would be boulders with, core drilled out and water sort of bubbling out. Over to the left, there's a small slide, very, very mellow. So this would skew to the younger kids for sure. You keep walking around. In here, this is like a structure that's like a big bird's nest. Kids love to crawl into spaces and feel enclosed. So this would be a place where they could crawl in like a big nest, and imaginative play would happen there. Keep walking around, there's some tables. This is a little thicket hut, which is pretty cool. I'll show you a photo of that shortly. And then you arrive at this zone at the end, and this would be like the culmination of the little magical journey you went on with these animals and features. There's a little playhouse. Excuse me. There's a ring, like a mushroom ring. There could be little stools for story time or balancing, stepping stones, magical mushrooms, and some animals. In here we have like a magical snail play sculpture. Our thought was we would incorporate a creative story as you work your way around here. Maybe it's a treasure hunt that all leads to a culmination out here. It might be small snails, count all the snails, and then you reach the big snail, or something of that nature. Something that adds a little bit of interest for a child as he's exploring. The other thing I wanted to point out, and this is true for the other area, is all these little seating areas for parents. That's what these little symbols are. They're all throughout the playground. This is a winning idea for parents, because you can comfortably sit near where your kids are playing. You don't have to watch them an acre away and sort of hope that everything's okay. It makes it a very, very comfortable, pleasant experience for parents to be in the playground with their kids. I have two slides just to help depict the character that this design is shooting for. Some of the photos are actual photos of the equipment. Some are more to give you a feeling of the character and the flavor. So you can see the top left, this is this idea of a boardwalk that's getting you up into the trees. Various shaped towers in there with slides coming off. There's that kinetic bird at the bottom. See that the kid can climb up into its belly and make its wings flap. Those pod climbers are on one of the elevated areas, and that's very cool too. There's little rope ladders so they can crawl up into these green pods and kind of sit there with a friend and again have more imaginative play. Some more elements. You see the stacked log climber feature at the top. Animal sculptures that add some whimsy throughout the space. The thicket hut at the bottom, that would be sort of conceptually like what we're showing in the young kids area, and the stone climbers and such. So you can see there's a real common theme of materials and thematic elements that help to reinforce the nature play. And I'll finish with two updated renderings. This is the central hub. You can see those those green pods up there. So this is, you can see in the background, this is the sort of boardwalk that goes up under the trees. So someone in a wheelchair could get all the way up to this elevated lookout here, for example, and could get across into this space. So it's quite an empowering playground for someone that's physically disabled. This is the sand area underneath, and you can see the various surfacing. This would be synthetic grass for somersaulting, tumbling. Probably wood chips through here, and these kind of stone climbers in the foreground. The younger kids area would be off to the right of this view. And right here, so you can see the central hub in the background. You can kind of make out the restroom and the big picnic shelter in the background. And this is it really captures the flavor of the young kids area. You can see how low key it is. Everything's very accessible to every user. It's all at ground level. Here's the friendly snake. Here's the boulders with water. This is the little slide, etc., etc. There's the nest feature there, so you can really see. And this tree's not exactly what you have, but it's as close as we could find. But that's the huge fig tree you have in the middle. That's the sort of specimen tree that really gives that space its character. So all this is happening in and around that giant fig tree. And the seating opportunities, so like comfortable seating for parents or caregivers everywhere, which is super important. So that kind of concludes the design presentation. I only have one slide left, and it's to talk about next steps, which these are sort of the big broad steps, which would be next for us, pending the Commission's consideration and comments. And so we're currently preparing sort of estimated costs for the city, and we'd have to, obviously there's a lot more development of the design, more technical aspects, but this is, tonight represents the vision of the playground, and then from this point on, we would get more technical and make it actually work and buildable. So with that, I'll stop and hand it back to Sheila or Chair Massey.
Thank you, Leif. And I think Chair Massey, will turn it back to you for seeing whether there are any questions from commissioners at this point.
All right, I'll try it again. Yes, let's go to questions from commissioners at this point. And Commissioner Waldeck, why don't we start with you?
Okay. I have a question about, so you have the design kind of next steps, but what happens, I mean, when is the next touch point for public engagement coming up?
I don't know that we would have many more public engagement periods. I mean, unless the design really changed significantly from what you currently see. The one thing that is missing, and we're just not there yet, is the design for both the restroom building and the picnic shelter. So the architecture for that will be coming back to the commission for you to review. But again, unless we begin to hear that this is not consistent with what we've been hearing from the public, we would not be having any additional input sessions from the public at this point.
Okay, that's
I mean,
my only.
we did advertise tonight. We sent out over 400 notifications for anybody who attended any of the previous workshops or filled out a survey online.
Okay, thank you. I think the rest of mine are comments on the design, so I'll save those.
Please, that would be a better approach. Okay, Commissioner Fields?
Yeah, I have a question about, and this might not be the right time, so I'm going to ask it anyway, but do we know the timeline on this? Since we just heard that restrooms are going to happen, I guess, later. Kind of where we are in terms of the timeline of actually making this happen.
I mean, I didn't want to, and I apologize. I didn't want to suggest that the restrooms were going to be built differently or after this. Only the design of the architecture will come back to the commission. It's not here tonight, but
Okay.
when we do the construction, it will all
It'll be
done
all
at
be
one-
together.
It'll
Okay,
all be
very
done at
good.
one time.
That was, I was thrown
I-
off by that comment. So thank you.
Yeah, so I
for clarifying that.
apologize. I only meant that the architecture for the restroom and the playground or the picnic area is not done yet, but so we'll be bringing that back. But when we go to construction, it will all be completed at one time.
Except are the tennis courts in a separate phase?
Tennis courts are in a separate phase.
Okay. That I
And
just
I-
wanted to clarify the phasing of all of this.
Yeah, and I can't speak to sort of the time. I mean, I don't know how long it will take to do construction documents. And I'll leave that to our friends from RRM. I mean, I would like to hope that we would be under construction sometime a year from now. That may be too aggressive. And so I'll leave it to RRM to give us a better sense about construction documents.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, Leaf. It was a great presentation.
Okay, Commissioner Held.
Sure. Leaf, can you talk a little bit just to the materials that are being used for the foundation or the ground? What are we replacing the sand with, and kind of what's the rationale? I'm more curious than anything else.
Sure. Are you still seeing my screen incidentally?
No.
No, okay. Let me see here. You got it now?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So currently it's mostly sand, and we heard a lot of and there's some wood chips as well. We heard a lot of comment mainly from parents that they weren't enamored with the sand due to how much comes home with them in their shoes. But it's inherently got amazing play value. So there is some sand, and it's the kind of golden colors you see. It's in more isolated areas that are easier to maintain. And if you had to steer your kids away from it, you may have a fighting chance of that. But so there's a little bit of sand. There is some wood chips, like the engineered wood fiber. So it's actually a product that doesn't splinter and has shock absorptive qualities. There is some synthetic grass, which also has cushioning in it. So it serves as a protective surface as well, but it's a different texture and it's good for sliding. Like, you know, the loose fill, which is sand, the wood fiber moves around, that you can't really slide on it. It's limited in that respect. And then there would be some other product, and we're still researching the pros and cons of a poured in place sort of a monolithic surface. Like you're all familiar with the rubber that you see in playgrounds. That's certainly a consideration. It's not for everywhere. It's accessible, but it can be quite hot. So there's some other products that are sort of coming onto the market, one of which is like a cork product that's used in a similar way. So it's kind of bound together with a resin, and it has some shock absorptive qualities, but it's cooler. So there would be some of that, because we realize the value of a unitary surface like that for maximum accessibility. So it's a combination.
Thank you.
And anything else?
Nope.
Okay, Commissioner Hall.
Okay, I actually had same question as Commissioner Held. I had noticed, so in your presentation, you said that these areas that are indicated with the circle 20 on them were going to be chips, wood chips. Is that the artificial wood chips that you just mentioned that don't sort of splinter? Okay. On the handout we got, or the packet we got, those areas that are all labeled 20 are keynoted that they'll be the poured in place rubber surface. So what's the preference for a poured in place versus the chip? Like what areas are you thinking?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I may have misspoken because we've gone back and forwards on this a few times.
Okay.
It kind of, we are weighing the pros and cons. It may not be that entire area. That area that's labeled as 20 may be broken into sort of sub areas. So we can get maximum accessibility. Let's just say, as a for instance, let me get my pointer again. Over here, these are those kind of like stacked rock features. We may want to bring more of a poured surface to one of the two because they offer the same play experience. So one would be more accessible than the other. So I think we may look at strategic places to bring in something like the rubber or a cork, similar type of surface, and supplement the wood chips. So that would really be in the next round of sort of design refinement to see which strategic areas we would want to do the rubber in.
Okay. In the raised accessible walkway, which that is pretty impressive that you're able to get that up to 6 feet going around. Is there spots? I see one has the stair going down over to the train, the existing train. Are there other places that are breaks in where you could access it via steps to get onto that pathway or off of that pathway?
Yeah, there are. So this is the one you referenced.
Mm-hmm.
This is also going down.
Okay.
I guess if depending on how adventurous you felt, you could also come this way, and that's a set of steps there too.
Okay.
So if you're not feeling like sliding, if you're there's 3 sets of stairs plus you could simply walk back down that way. So that would be 4 access points that don't involve getting on some play equipment.
Okay. And then I'll save the rest of my comments for the comment period. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? No, okay. Yeah, I just had a few things. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, looking at this here, I wasn't clear with the 2 buildings on the right side, numbers 12 and 14. You talked about a picnic shelter, and I wasn't sure which one was the picnic shelter, and then what the other building was going to be.
Thank you for the question. I didn't really address that. This one is the hard roofed picnic shelter that would have more of a traditional look. This is actually a shade canopy. It's not a building.
Oh, okay. What's going to be under it?
It's just so there's like a wooden sort of boardwalk sort of pathway, and then these little L shapes would be seating opportunities, like 16-inch high benches for sitting on.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, the picnic shelter, is that going to be really an enclosed building? Is that going to be sort of open walls? How does that work?
Yes, the latter. It would be a roof with posts and open walls. There's no walls. So it'd be like a picnic pavilion.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And is it going to have then, are you contemplating like sort of traditional picnic tables in there or something more, I don't know, contemporary?
No, I think, that's beyond the thought that we've done at this point. But if you put me on the spot, I would imagine that they're going to be picnic tables that are in character with the rest of the playground. So probably leaning a little more rustic than contemporary.
Okay, no, that's fine. The zip line. I know you will have gone through this with the public, but I'm interested to know how that works with children and how that's being done from a safety standpoint.
It's a manufactured piece of equipment, so it's not like these extreme zip lines you might do at an adventure course or something like that. It's essentially a cable that's tensioned between 2 points, and there's a cable with a little sort of platform, I guess you could say. So you hold onto it and you stand on the platform and you move along the cable. There's a speed governing device in it, so you can't go at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but it just slides along the cable, and it's not very far off the ground. Like the part that you stand on is maybe 2 feet at the highest, and then it comes down from there. So it's not extreme, if that's the impression it gives off.
Well, I just didn't know. We're only seeing it from the top, so.
Yeah. I might be able to pull up a photo of it a little bit later and show you an example of one that we've done.
Okay, that would be interesting if it's possible.
Yeah, I'll do that off to the side later on.
Okay. I like the planning that's been done around making as much of the boardwalk accessible to disabled children as you have. The one thing I'm not sure of is you pointed out the various stairways that can be used to access it, but where is the access point for the disabled access?
It is right here. This piece is actually at ground level.
Ah, okay.
So you would come right onto it here.
Mm-hmm.
This portion slopes up to a landing.
Yeah.
That's flat. Then this portion slopes up again. So it's incrementally climbing as you go. So it starts at ground level and it makes its way up. When you get to this point, you're all the way up at 6 feet.
Okay. And you're going, I mean, I don't know what this real, I can't really sort of visualize the scale here, but it looks as though it's a very gentle upslope then.
Yeah, it is. It's I mean, that's governed on the steepest end by the building code, but
Right.
we're going to try to keep it flatter than the max.
That's good. That's good. Okay. We had talked about timelines and I understand that you've got to go through some processes and design refinements and the like before construction can begin. But I'm curious, once we get to day one of starting construction, how long do you anticipate to do the actual construction?
If I understand the question correctly, it's like, what's the construction period from
Yes, exactly.
from groundbreaking to ribbon cutting?
Exactly.
Yeah, I would say, one answer is only a fool tries to anticipate construction durations because you're invariably wrong. But I would say it's probably about a year. Could push a little longer than that, depending on how some of these details come into play. But I would say in round numbers, the site would be in construction for a year.
Okay, that's close enough. And we understand that we're talking rough estimates here, but it was really, my thought was, are we talking 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, etc. So that's fine.
Can I piggyback a question on that one? I have a question that relates to that. Can I just ask it
Yeah,
now?
sure. Yeah, please. go.
Is there any hope of phasing this at all so that any parts of it can still be used while other parts are being constructed?
Good questions.
Well, I can answer from a sort of a technical perspective. The answer is it can always be phased if that's the strategy that the owner, the city, wants to take. And there's pros and cons to both. One of the downsides is the project will cost more if you phase it. It's more efficient to do it in one go. But I think maybe the position you're coming from is you wouldn't have to close the entire playground down at once. So maybe you could preserve some usable area and then flip-flop to the new and the old. So we can certainly talk more to Sheila about that idea. It's technically feasible, but I guess it's a different conversation about the city's goals and objectives.
And the cost. Okay.
Okay. So that completes your question, Commissioner Wallach? Okay. It completes mine as well. So thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. It's extremely detailed, and I thought you did an excellent job of walking us through what is a very complex and very exciting project. At this time, we'll open this agenda item for public comment. Do we have any requests for public comment?
Chair Massey, I do not see any hands raised at this time. Oh, I misspoke. Somebody just raised their hand.
Okay, well then, why don't we let the person go ahead? And if so, yeah.
Sure. Drew.
Good evening, commissioners, staff, consultants. So I was expecting other people would comment. Sorry for the delay. Based on the previous meeting, there were more public participants commenting. So, excuse me, a few things. One, I think all in all, quite a good job seeing how things merge together and just different themes and stuff. I also feel like the train loop got a little more integrated with this pass. I think there's a little more could be done, but it's more connected with the staircase and the path and some stuff like that. So, but I think all in all, a nice leap forward from the past two steps or the past steps. One thing in general about the Adventureland concept, I just think, I don't have specifics per se, but I wonder about following this Adventureland concept through other cultures. And is there some play things or just some of the designs? It's not overall changing things, but just to incorporate, like we have diverse citizens from around the world, so to speak. And is Adventureland looked at differently in different cultures? And there's some ideas that could be incorporated into this that would blend that. It can be so they're more inclusive and also a learning experience. I just think about different movies I've seen and different things. So it's not to change radically what's here, it's to enhance it and be just, yeah, because this is kind of from a US centric standpoint, I feel like, and that's not a bad thing. There's a lot of great things here. So that's kind of a broad question, a broad thing. I think that there might be some things that could be added. I don't have specifics, but, and then the other was, my personal feedback is it'd be nice to have another round of public somehow. And what I don't necessarily mean a bunch of community meetings necessarily, but I have looked on the website on some of this. This is hard to give feedback, like commission meeting, like, oh, little 20 spot, there's something wrong here. There's like really not a great way to actually give feedback. And I think there'd be people in the public that might give some feedback on this refined design that would make it better. And that given the amount of money we're talking about and stuff, that there's some way, I'm not sure how, like I said, I'm not looking to have 5 more community meetings necessarily, but I know I would look through, like I feel like I'm missing views in the park of how that might look and stuff, and some interaction maybe on what's the thinking before suddenly we're in construction document zone. So yep, and I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Do we have anybody else?
I do not see any other hands raised, Chair Massey.
Okay, well then, I think we will close the public comment period at this time and bring this back to the commission for commissioners' comments. Commissioner Holm, why don't we start with you this time?
Okay, thank you. Overall, I think this is a really exciting design, and I applaud the work you guys have done. I appreciate it, and I look forward to this getting built. One comment on the sand area, if it ends up being sand into the Adventure Village playground, like right in the center there, to make sure we have a transfer station for kids in wheelchair to actually be able to get in. And then for the accessible pathway, I want to make sure that it's wide enough that people can be standing on the edge, looking out, while a wheelchair could still pass behind them. Because I think that's also going to serve as a parent lookout spot all the way along there. So I could see, and/or a stroller spot. So I could see parents, if they have a newborn or a young child, rolling the stroller up there while the older child is playing, and they're sort of watching them from there. So I want to make sure that you have the width, or maybe a few more pull-out spots on the longer runs to allow like a lookout spot or something. But then also I think of my own daughter, and she always wants me to get up on top of where she is with her, which so it's a long sort of run between stairs. And so it'd be nice to have a couple little stair breaks in there where, your child could climb up the logs and you don't have to. I think the log climbing and the other things are really awesome. But there's some days that I'm not going to climb the logs, so to speak. So I think a couple little sort of break-in points would be good. The other thing, a lot of times when you have, and the really cool thing is with height, and then the sort of higher tower that you get there, you get a really cool tall slide. But a lot of times when you have those sort of really tall slides, it's nice to get a mid-size slide at the same time, because otherwise you'll get like a bunch of kids sort of waiting all to use the one. And so it'd be nice if you could sort of sneak an extra slide in or two in various places, so that because the kids kind of tend to congregate around those slide entry points, and then you get kids that kind of like chicken out and want to go on a smaller slide or whatever. So to give a little more variety at that spot. And then, the other thing. So this is because I work in schools, and it's amazing how inventive the kids are. But I don't think that you should design this, but maybe plan that the city's going to have to implement this later, potentially, which is at the wheelchair entrance sort of flat area that they could come in and put in some switchbacks to keep bikes from riding up onto the whole walkway, because I could see kids roaring through there and just loving to ride their bike up and ride all across all those pathways and then jump off them at various points. And I say that because we've had kids jump off of buildings on their bikes. So like if I wouldn't put it in at first, but at least have maybe if you make it large enough that the city could always retrofit if my paranoia comes true. I don't know. And then also working on a lot of these types of things with landscape architects, with all the trees, I would strongly encourage early arborist review of everything. I've had multiple projects where we've had the arborists involved, or we thought we had them involved early, but they I would this is maybe more for Sheila, that you have the city's landscape architect like really make sure there's an arborist like design checkpoint along multiple parts, because I've worked with some really fantastic landscape architects who have arborists on staff, and they still do things that the arborist says, why did you do that? And it's damaging for the tree roots. So, and given that you're really trying to weave this through, I think that's going to be really critical. For the questions on phasing, I would definitely say don't phase. You've got a lot of parks in the network of the city's parks, and I think you're going to be much better off to give a contractor the entire site, let them build the whole thing at once. And I would strongly encourage to just do it in one shot and not try to go through the gymnastics of opening different sections. For the little kids zone, I think that's also really fantastic. I liked the integration of sort of intermediary child seating spots for parents to be able to interact. Anything, on the rocks and any of that, if any of those things that the kids climb on have movement to them, I know that really is a big thing. My daughter always goes to all the things that move. So any of those types of interesting things like that. And then that little mound that had the slide on it. We've been taking our daughter to the park since she was about 1.5, and she was able to go off any slide that was 6 feet tall. That looks like it's like a 3-foot tall slide. And so I don't know, I would say you probably could get away with a bigger slide that will serve more kids, because most all the kids can go down them. So I think that's all my comments. Back here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Fields?
Yeah, thank you. Overall, I think this is a great improvement on what's already there and keeps what is great there. I'd echo what Commissioner Holmes said about making sure that we incorporate the comments of the arborist early on to make sure that we don't do anything, of course, to ruin the great asset, which is the trees that are currently present in the park. I attended one of the live sort of survey moments, and it was very clear that this was the by far the design choice that people really wanted. And I agree, so that's always nice. I think this is a great improvement, and I'm excited to see it come to fruition. Sort of practically speaking, any park that is a gathering center for people with small children needs, of course, to have a restroom. And of course, this will have one, but I think given the sort of restroom aspect, I think phasing probably doesn't work. So I think that's probably something to avoid, that we want to have everything available all at once, and all closed at once as well. In terms of the materials, I think we're on the right track. There's probably a little bit closer of a review that needs to take place, but I think we're moving in the right direction. I think that this is a huge improvement in terms of the picnic experience, which frankly, the picnic areas are already well used in Central Park. And I think having more and better picnic areas will just increase use. And really, I'm excited to see this come to be actualized. This is a beloved park. It is, in fact, the Central Park for good reason. And the people of San Mateo, children and their parents, deserve this. So I'm excited to see it come out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Waldick?
Sure. Okay, let's see. Got my notes in different places, so bear with me here. Okay, I would like to pick up the point that Drew made from the public comment. I think this is, I love the theme. I was very much for this also in the public meetings and all of that. But I do think it is very European fairyland centered. If we can get in some like myths or, just kind of the things from the other cultures, just in little places, like if we think about animal statues or that sort of thing, maybe we could do something there to get some other stories in places we can get them. I think that's a great idea and would love to see that. Let's see, other general comments. I second what Eric said about a taller slide. I think I agree that my 1.5-year-old, like as soon as he could walk, he was basically going down the big kid slide. So if we can get a bigger one in there, let's do it. I think it would be really popular. In the sort of the flow between the Tiny Tot area and the larger one, I love that they're connected. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, so I'm going to be, if this is in existence now, we would be split attention often. My 3-year-old might be on the older, but what I'm saying is, if we can get some parent seating that has vantage points to both areas, I think it would be really helpful. And also that when your kid runs the entire length of the playground, you don't have to follow them everywhere. I also second Eric's point about having access points. Kids want us up there. We don't always want to be up there. And so getting up there quickly is helpful. Okay, sticking with the Tiny Tot area, I love that count the snails kind of idea, that it's sort of cumulative. And I wonder if you could be really playful with it and have sort of a like hidden ones, kind of the like pictures in the stone wall, that kind of thing, where they're not so easy. Like you have some really easy ones that the really little kids could do, but I think the older kids would love doing a treasure hunt like that. In one of the pictures you had sort of as a sample, like kind of a trough water play area. And I was thinking that before any of this, not necessarily like a wooden trough, but if sort of something could be between 2 boulders where it's maybe a stone creek kind of thing that kids can kind of, splash their hands in and sort of play that way, put their bath toys through, that kind of thing would be really cool. Okay, let's see. So on the zip line, love that idea. We were actually at a park in Fort Collins that had a zip line, and there was always a huge line for it. It was very popular. So I would suggest, if you can, somewhere around the start of the zip line, that you have something there for kids to do or look at doesn't have to be, active, but like pictures or, shapes on the ground so that they have something to kind of play around with while they're waiting there to get on the structure, would be pretty cool. Okay. Got that one. That one. I think that's everything except to say I totally understand if it can't be phased, but since this is like, we call this our park in our house because we live so close to it and we go there like weekly, it just would be really sad for it to be closed for a year and a half, but I totally get the cost and all of that. But I just wanted to put that out there. I think a lot of people will be pretty sad if it's blocked off for a year and a half. I think that's it for me. Let me just do one sweep through my different documents here. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Held.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for doing this. I think this is beautiful. I love that it incorporates all the trees and the treehouse feel, I think is one of the neatest parts. And the extra audience in my house tonight appreciates all the climbing opportunities as well. I love the thoughtful consideration for all ages and accessibility as well. Really glad to see that the tot area is fenced off. I think that is super important. And agree with Commissioner Wolnick that if there's a chance to create seating so that you can keep an eye on both areas, I think that would be really popular with parents. And just one other consideration, the exit on the right that comes out to El Camino, the way it currently stands, I too often see kids sprint out there without their parents, and it's a really busy street. So just something to think about, whether it's trees or some little like diversion there, if there's a way to kind of bend that off so kids can't get out there as fast and easily, that may be something just to consider from a safety standpoint. But I'm excited about this. I think this is not only going to serve families, but really be a center for the community that we really desperately need. And I think that this structure serves that really well. That's it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair Massey. Sorry, I did have one more thing I thought of.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we were talking about the arborist, but one thing we might want to consider is, because these are going to be up in the canopy, my kids love picking flowers, picking leaves, all that kind of stuff. So I think we should consider that when we're sort of where the walkway actually goes and how accessible pulling things off of the trees are. Just to maintain the health of those trees. Okay, that's it.
Okay, I agree with you on that one. I don't have a lot to add to the very detailed and perceptive comments of my fellow commissioners. But as does everybody else, I like this very much. I think that it's an exciting change and a wonderful addition to the facilities available for children in our city, and hugely overdue. I mean, I remember playing on equipment very much like what's there now when I was a child, and that was a while ago. So this is great. I particularly like the way that that the design has made use of the trees, of the urban forest setting, and rather than just placing equipment under the trees, you've really been aggressive about getting up into the trees with the whole boardwalk concept, and making incredibly good use of all of that. The other thing that I am particularly impressed with is the design, the elements of the design for accessibility. It's something that doesn't always get thought about in children, but it is a big thing, and you have, I think, done an enormous amount to make this work. And it looks very practical. It looks like a setup that a child in a chair really could use. So I am very appreciative of that aspect of this. Some of the more specific points, I agree about the comment from Commissioner Holm about bike proofing. You see that at playgrounds all the time, that the kids go through on bikes, and the bikes and particularly a boardwalk setup like this is going to be irresistible. I think I agree on the comment about the bigger slide. I've seen very little kids who are unafraid to take on very tall slides. So I agree with that. Also, the comment about having parent seating available at sort of the border between the tot area and the area for older kids, because there is that point in a family's growth when there are players on both fields, and the parent has to swivel back and forth. Beyond that, I guess there were just a couple of other things that I wanted to solicit some comment from Ms. Kanzian, and that is, first of all, the discussion of the possibility of expanding the water feature. And I understand that water features have sort of their own issues, and that there was discussion about this during the public review process. So I would appreciate, or at least want to provide you an opportunity to comment on that aspect. The other issue that I also had similar questions about was whether there was any thought of bringing the design back to the commission when it's really final. I gather we're sort of at a dress rehearsal stage on this, that we're all but ready to go, but it sounds like there's going to be some further refinement. And so question are there thoughts of bringing this back to us, and or providing some possibility for additional public input? And I don't know offhand how that might happen, but what your thoughts would be on that.
So thank you, Chair Massey. I'll take the second question first because that's the easier one. Yes, we will absolutely bring a more refined design back to the commission for review, particularly as we look at some of the recommendations that you've all made, and whether or not we're able to incorporate those in the next iteration. So we'll be happy to go ahead and do that. From a public perspective, we can continue to post these on our website and ask for feedback. We can certainly, when it comes back to the commission, notify everybody again that we notified this last time. So we're open to any suggestions for additional comments and feedback. So we'll certainly internally come back and think more about that. And I think that bringing it back to the commission is not an issue at all. I think the issue about water is one, and I'll look to our consultants as well for some help on this one. But anytime that we have any kind of water feature other than just more of a trickle of water that helps mix, sand and water together, the water needs to be recirculated. And that means holding tanks in the ground. It means filtration. It means essentially putting water through the exact same purification process as if it was a swimming pool. And that adds cost to the project. And so I think we'll need to be really balanced about how much we want to do in that area. I also know, just based upon our experience with our splash pad out at Ryder Park, with all good intentions, there are times when it just has stopped working. And I think, you know, Chair Massey, you mentioned, or someone mentioned about going to areas where there's water features and there's nothing, it doesn't work. And so to the extent that we really want to avoid that in the future, I think that's really a consideration. But I'll look to Leaf to provide any additional comment relative to just sort of water features in general of this scale, not talking about a splash pad or something for kids to run through.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. I concur with your thoughts, and we did look at a number of things. One of the commissioners, I can't remember who it was now, but mentioned the sort of one of the previous renderings had more of a trough that water would run from one height to another. We'd be happy to keep discussing this with staff to try to find a happy balance. We took the approach of keeping it very simple and almost fail-proof, because there's no mechanical moving parts, which just simplifies the engineering, simplifies the maintenance. Is a sort of a less of a lightning rod for sort of questioning the use of water as a recreational element, you know, with the resource conservation. So there's a lot of things that go into this topic. However, in the other column is they're incredibly popular, so and provide massive play value. So Sheila's right about needing to treat the water and filter it and recirculate it, or you just simply pour it down the drain, which is kind of not very sustainable. So maybe I could just say we'll continue to look at it and bounce ideas back and forth with staff and see if we can make it any bigger and still meet those goals of sustainability.
Okay, any final comments from anyone? Yes. Commissioner Wall, are you looking to comment, or?
I am, but Eric can go first.
Yeah.
So I was just going to add on the bikes. One thing I was thinking is that when I'm at Central Park now, there's a lot of times bikes are strewn about because the kids ride there, and so to make sure to include some bike racks in there, and then also I really like Commissioner Walding's idea of the observation ability to see both areas and sort of tagging on that. One thing that I really like in the Japanese tea garden is the little stroller and scooter parking zone. And that, you know, a lot of times I think families will go there, they'll walk with their stroller, kids will ride a little three-wheeled scooter or whatever. And it's nice to have a place that they could park that so that they're not leaving them on the pathway. So those are my other just two comments.
You beat me to the bike parking. That was one of my comments too, is that you ride all the way to the playground and then there's nowhere to put your bikes. And then on the water feature, I just wanted to add that I really like how you're designing it, that it will look and be playful even if there's not water there, because I don't know if this is intended to run water year round or whether it would be part of the year, but I like the boulders and that sort of stuff, because I think it could be played on without the water there. So I like that. And I also wanted to say, I don't think I said that I really like this, and I had so many comments because I'm really excited about it. And I think this is going in a really, really awesome direction. And I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing on this. Thank you.
Okay, well, then I think that will serve to complete this agenda item. I want to thank our consultants for being here tonight and for putting on such an excellent presentation, and for your excellent work so far. We're really excited and looking forward to carrying this to a very successful conclusion. Next step here are reports and announcements. Sheila, you have any for us?
So I just wanted to do a couple of updates in terms of our programming and kind of where, how we ended up this past summer. We had a very successful summer program for children, and really almost anything that was held outdoors was either full or full with waiting lists on it. So things like tennis, very, very successful, both for children and adults. All of our sports camps were filled. Most of our summer camp programs were filled. The one that I think is pretty amazing, and I asked staff to give me a couple of numbers before I left. We offered this last summer 450 youth swim classes, which is almost double what we do in any summer. And there were nearly 1,500 kids enrolled this past summer. So I think we had a very successful summer. From a revenue standpoint, we were about at $900,000 from a revenue generation standpoint. If we look back to a typical year in the summer 2019, our summer revenue was 1.1 million. So we aren't too far off from what we typically have done in the summer. And just to give you a sense, last fiscal year, we only took in $860,000 in revenue for the entire year. So we think we had a really successful summer program. Fall appears to be off to a really good start. We are continuing to look at how we may have to modify some of our indoor programs based upon both the mask mandates, as well as just making sure that that it meets people's comfort level. And sometimes whatever a mandate might be is different than what the public feels comfortable with. And so we're going to continue to evaluate that. But so far, our fall program seems to be off to a really good start. So we're busy. We are back in the adult softball business. We are now taking picnic reservations for the remainder of the calendar year. And so for most of our operations, we are pretty much back to what we would consider to be mostly normal operations. So, but we had a very successful summer, and staff worked really, really hard to make it so.
Well, that is very, very good to hear, and we appreciate the report, and hope we can continue this level of success into the fall. I had just one, really more of a question than an announcement, and that is when we met last, I think we were all more optimistic about our progress with COVID, and there were thoughts or speculation about the possibility of returning to either hybrid or in-person meetings. I'm thinking that may have gone back on the shelf, but I wondered if you could give us an update on that.
You know, I think that the city clerk's office was very prepared to start doing hybrid meetings at the city council level. And I think what what began to crimp that a little bit was when the county went back with their indoor mask mandate. Because there was not an interest from either council members or staff or members of the public to conduct a public meeting when everybody would have to be masked indoors. And so I don't know the timetable of when they will consider that, but I know that it really hinged around the indoor mask mandate, in a sense that people just did not want to conduct meetings when everybody would have to be masked.
Well, that's quite understandable. And I thought that's where we were going to end up, but just wanted to have to hear where we are. So we'll just continue as we are for the indefinite future until we get advice otherwise from the city clerk. Okay.
Correct.
Do we have any other comments or announcements from anyone else on the commission? Well, seeing none, now I'll declare us adjourned. Thank you all very much. I'll see you next month.
Thank you all for your great comments.
Thank you.